Welcome to another edition of Listen MKE Live. I'm James Causey, a columnist with the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, and I will be your host today with a great panel to discuss Kenosha 1 year since the Jacob Blake shooting. How much progress has been made in Kenosha? What challenges remain, and what can we expect to see? Listen MKE Live is a collaboration between the Ideas Lab, which I'm a member of at the Journal Sentinel, WWM 89.7 FM, Milwaukee's NPR, Milwaukee's PBS, and the Milwaukee Public Library. Also, I would like to tell you guys to go to jsonline.com to look at a detailed package of stories that takes a look at Kenosha. We talk to people who live there and hear what they have to say. You can also read my column on what I believe needs to happen in Kenosha to get real change. Joining us today to talk about Kenosha is Diamond Hartwell, a Kenosha native and human rights activist. Dayvin Hallmon, a former Kenosha County Board member who fought to have Kenosha Police wear body cameras, and State Representative David Bowen from Milwaukee, who's been marching for over a year for police reform and human rights. We're also hope to have a member of Jacob Blake's family on as well. But I want to start first with Diamond. Diamond, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So the mayor has started this effort to bring people together since the shooting of Jacob Blake. And I just want to talk to you about what has taken place as far as these talks. What have you participated in?
Well, this grand scheme idea is called the Commit to Roadmap Action or Commit to Action Roadmap, something along those lines. And this is something that actually came to his mind before the events of Jacob and everything that followed. It didn't come to fruition until after the events that unfolded in Kenosha. It really came together after he hosted listening sessions. I believe those didn't happen for a while after the incident with Jacob. Those happened a couple months later. And really, the Commit to Action Roadmap is it's a group of committees and subcommittees that get together and hyper focus on specific things. So the first step on this roadmap was policing. So there was the policing committee made of local clergy, and then the subcommittees, which were headed by local clergy members. And then there were people like me, just regular citizens, and there were some officers on it, some people on different city administration boards and things like that. And we all focused on specific things within the police department. Like the one I was on was training. And we spent a couple months doing research and coming up with proposals. And then we submitted our proposals. And I did learn last night that the committee did meet and they talked about all the proposals that came forward. And I guess we're at a speed bump in the road, waiting for the report to come back.
Is that a little bit disappointing knowing that so far, you guys have been meeting for months and you come up with proposals to make change, but still it's been a little slow with the action to take place?
Oh, it's absolutely disappointing. If there's a word for more than disappointing, it is that. Because the whole process has been incredibly slow. This is something that the mayor had been talking about doing since June or July of last year. And it's not something that really came together until early this year. I think the first meetings that we had were in March. And then we did do a lot of research. We spent a lot of time together. We met once or twice a month, put a lot of hours in. Me personally, I didn't do the research. I did community outreach and got their opinions like, hey, what do you want to see training wise? Did a lot of learning. Like I learned all about KPD's training. A lot of effort was put into it, and it was a lot of emotional labor too. And for it to just be sitting on somebody's desk right now is like really disappointing. And it's really a slap in the face because it's not just me personally that's affected, it's the whole community. And I know there's a lot of community members right now who are like, what's going on? Where's the change? If you're actually doing something, where's it at? Like, update us. What's going on?
Yeah. So we have Justin Blake, the uncle of Jacob Blake, that I would like to bring in right now. How you doing, Justin?
Assalamu alaikum, dear brother. Thank you for having us. Doing great.
Hey, thanks for joining us. Can you give us an update on how your relative, how Jacob Blake is doing, your nephew?
My nephew, little Jake, is just getting out of the hospital again after suffering severe pain. They're trying to, he has a new doctor, so they're trying to manage his pain better. In order for him to do his therapy, he needed more pain management. But he and our entire family are disgusted at the lying of about all the deceitfulness that's gone on in and around this case. Diamond, we love her to death, but she's such a lady, she couldn't say it. The mayor's a bold-faced liar. They utilize community members to make it look and to placate to the people as though something was going to be done when nothing at all has happened. I just got off another interview where the chief of police said the African-American community, he's been having meetings talking to the people and things are going well. He's a liar. Things are not well in the community. I don't have to be nice anymore about it. Racist systemic runs through their whole top echelon in their government, in the sheriff's police department, in the DA, and etc. So, you know, as an uncle, I got the right to be frustrated as hell after I've been down there almost a year. Nothing at all has happened. The police officer who shot my nephew's back at work. There's a gentleman running for sheriff that murdered somebody 15 years ago. We got arrested and brutalized and our shoulder torn out of place while we were in custody. So nothing absolutely has changed. It's gotten worse. And I love Diamond to death. She's such a lady, but I don't have to be nice.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you want to see? What kind of change do you want to see happen in Kenosha? I know I understand the frustration, but let's talk about change that you would like to see.
Well, let's talk about how about let's have a real investigation. How about let's get the cop that shot my nephew indicted and get him fired and indicted in jail. That'd be the hell of a beginning, because right now it's open season on African Americans in Kenosha. Why? Because my nephew didn't commit a crime. They never charged him with a crime. And if you understand that fact, and this man got away with shooting our nephew 7 times in the back and paralyze him, then you can understand that no African Americans in the city, state, or county of Wisconsin, or specifically Kenosha, Wisconsin, are able to walk around in comfort. How can they possibly?
Can we talk a little bit about how Jacob's sons are doing? I know that they witnessed the shooting. They were in the back seat when their father was shot. What kind of trauma did they endure, and how are they coping right now?
They're not coping well. They often have times where the situations you can clearly see are responses and actions that are far outside what a kid their age would do, and they're in therapy. And let's hope somewhere down the line and in the future that they can live more of a regular life. But the fact of the matter is, they watched their father being shot right outside their door 7 times in the back by a white police officer named Shetsky that's still employed by the police department of Kenosha.
Let me ask you this. So, you know, Jacob Blake has had over 30 surgeries. What's the prognosis on him for any kind of recovery? I know you mentioned the pain that he was undergoing. Is there any chance that he'll ever walk again?
Not at this point, brother. It's pain every day. He manages to keep his head up and stay on point, continue to fight the battle, and he has dreams and has goals of walking again, but the realization of that being right now isn't that highly that will happen. What would help is trying to get some type of justice and correct things in Kenosha so this doesn't happen to another African-American father in front of his children in Kenosha.
Okay. Hey, I appreciate you coming on. If you can, I want you to hang tight. I want to go to Representative David Bowen, and if we could bring David Bowen on. Hey, David. So you've been marching all over the country, and for justice and for police reform. You proposed several bills on police reform. What do those bills look like?
So we proposed a whole package, and this really dived into the solutions that were being avoided by the folks that were at the table controlling the conversation around reform. There is no easy way to do this. No way to put the things under the rug that are just too controversial to talk about when it comes to an issue, so that citizens in the state of Wisconsin can be treated as human beings. They can be respected of their rights. And what we did was we went from every angle to ensure that there can be impartiality. We can take out a bias. We can take out of the processes that could lean a certain way because someone may decide that they want to not conduct an investigation properly. They want to sway the report that goes to someone to make a decision on charging, and that decision to charge isn't made by somebody that will be inclined, after their history of working with that police department, to lean a certain way in that charge. So we went to the basics, and we have a 12 bill package that dives into everything from the charging decision itself. Instead of a DA, it would be by a court-appointed judge, just like we're seeing in the John Doe case with Jay Anderson Jr. It would be ensuring that the folks conducting the investigations of a police-involved shooting, even though now we have state law that changes it, that police department isn't investigating themselves, we also need to make sure that the individuals conducting the investigation aren't related or have not worked on the police department that they're investigating before. There needs to be a time removed so that we can create some distance, and that we can create reasons for the public to trust their police departments again, to trust when that it's in their hands and they have a chance to be able to show that they're going to be by the book, that they're going to follow these rules. And we're seeing so many instances in real time right now of investigations that have been done, and they literally have to be thrown away because they weren't done with the impartiality that they needed. We also have bills around even ensuring that the holding officers accountable, that the definitions of police of use of force entails that you are not throwing under the rug the chance of an officer not being held accountable by their colleague. It was one of the things that was taken out of the police reforms that were passed, and it was opposed by the Milwaukee Police Association, unfortunately, on the floor of the assembly at the last minute. And we need that part of the legislation to ensure that officers have the backup to support holding each other accountable, that we can create cultures where officers do not have to fear that if they do hold their colleagues accountable, that the backlash will come back on them. It should be a requirement for officers to report each other. And right now, that requirement was taken out. So there are a lot of solutions that the current state task force that was created by the Speaker of the Assembly, Robin Vos, and held under tight-fisted control under Jim Steineke in the Assembly, they did not allow a number of solutions to be talked about and discussed at that table. But we know the solutions that we brought forward in the Enough is Enough package is supported by folks in the community because we listened, and it's even supported by folks in law enforcement. We listen to police chiefs. Police chiefs want to be heard and respected when they make a decision to fire an officer, and that the decision to fire the officer, especially if a chief is saying, I looked at this case, I looked at the situation, this officer is not fit to be on this force. It should be harder for the reverse process to stop that firing. And right now, that process is sometimes subverted and sometimes rejected, even when a police chief says, I'm trying to lead this department in a certain direction, and this officer is not showing he has the capabilities, not showing he has the characteristics, the integrity to be a part of this department, and the process is too easy to keep that officer on the force.
Let me ask you this. Does this bill have any inklings of a defund the police or anything of that ilk? Because right now, as we speak, there's a defund the police conversation taking place right now where police chiefs across the state of Wisconsin are meeting, and they're saying that, people are telling us that they want police, they want protection, they need us, and they want more police officers. So does anything in your package deal with defunding police in any way, shape, or form?
The great thing about this package is that we get above that argument, and we have to understand what communities are saying when there are questions if you should fund a police department. It's because a community does not feel respected. They do not feel as if the police department itself that they are paying for every day, and they incur bills because of court cases of officers not doing the proper things by the book, not actually respecting the rights of citizens. They are the ones that are questioning, what are we funding our departments for if we're ending up with more debt and more bills and more things financially that are putting us in a bad light. So I have to first off say all the bills in our package are above that argument. If we had fire departments that chose which fires to fight, everybody would say, well, what's going on? What are we really paying for? And I think what communities are saying is that they want police departments, especially when you go into polling and you ask people, do you want a police department that respects everybody's rights? Everybody says yes. A vast majority of people are saying yes. A vast majority of people are saying they want good service from police departments, but they are also saying substandard service should not be appropriate. It should not be allowed. That we want to be able to provide and pay for the best service that we can get. That's what communities are saying. And I get that my Republican colleagues have tried to bring this up on the floor. And I have always said, you have to go back to what communities are feeling, what they are going through in these processes. And are they actually getting the excellent service that they should be paying for? Or is it substandard? Is it being reverted back to being treated in a way where they are paying for a service only to be allowed to be turned into targets at the end of the day? We've seen time and time again over years in Milwaukee and across the state of Wisconsin, across this nation, when departments do not live up to higher standards, there's a culture that allows a race to the bottom. There's a culture that allows individuals, Black men, to be given these illegal checks where they literally are having their rights violated. Drugs are being planted on them. We end up having these situations in our departments where there are these cliques that are formed around who can hurt people the most. These are real things that have happened in our communities across this nation and across our state. And I get it that there are a number of lawmakers that would say, David, I don't know what that's like in my community. We have officers that we trust. We have officers that have respected us and engaged us in a different way. And I can say, I need you to find empathy for a community that is looking for leadership, looking for excellent service from their police departments, and they aren't getting it.
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. And I want to tell people that you can pose questions to this panel because this is a great discussion. But this is a good time for me to move to Dayvin, who lived in Kenosha, was and worked there as a politician. Dayvin, when you hear what David Bowen is expressing, I know you understand that frustrations firsthand. You fought to have Kenosha police officers armed with body cams, and you went through that fight, and you also experienced just the what it's like to be a Black man living in Kenosha. Can you tell me about the frustration you experienced when you were were you participating in politics there?
Anything having to do with race or racism was basically something that no one wanted to touch. And what makes it astonishing isn't so much that, but that you have a fairly significant contingent that votes blue or identifies as Democrat, hardcore union folks, a number of whom have lived in Kenosha long enough to know that it has a history of being a sundown town. But of course, no one ever bothers to say that out loud. So, I mean, the dishonesty just runs deep. I don't know what else to say.
The frustration got you to the point where you said that you had to leave, correct?
Yeah. I mean, I still remember the day I went into the sheriff's department to pick up a printed copy of the policies and procedures, and, you know, walked into that area, and the first deputy comes out and looks at me. Oh, yeah, Supervisor Hallmon. Okay, I'll get your stuff. I'll be back in a minute. Goes through the door. Different deputy comes out. And that second deputy apparently had no idea was the county board supervisor, sees me sitting there with my head in my hands and is spooked by my presence. You know, I don't know. I don't know what policy walls you can erect to protect around that. If you've got somebody who's trained with a badge and a gun and they're terrified inside of the most secure building in all of Kenosha County, then there's no telling what you're going to do on the street. My presence shouldn't spook you.
So I've read a piece where you were talking about an incident that happened across the street from a school with the police department rushing into a home. Can you talk about the lack of understanding that the police department showed when they did this, when this incident occurred?
It just happened. It just seemed to be very, very careless. And so it was an afternoon. I was actually on my way walking down the street to church. There's an elementary school along that route. And as I'm walking down the sidewalk, I've got the school across the street on the right-hand side of me. And I see a line of guys in big jackets, and they've got like a battering ram, and they're running towards me. And I had to jump out the way on the sidewalk, and they ran into a home that I had just passed. Well, the school buses are coming to pick up kids from the school across the street. And so there were men out there with really big guns. Why didn't somebody call the school? It's almost just as if they just didn't care.
Yeah. I want to bring Diamond back on. Diamond, as a young person, the energy that was generated from the marching and the protesting, has Kenosha ever experienced something like that, where young people have like risen to the top and have made demands in your lifetime? What, you're 26 years old. Have you ever seen anything like this before?
I got a taste of it, just a very small taste of it. The first ever protest, that's not true. The first ever racially motivated protest that I've ever seen in Kenosha, and I've been here my whole life, was in 2014 after Mike Brown. A very small group of us stood outside of the courthouse and stood in solidarity for Mike Brown. And that was the first taste I got. And I would not get a taste again until Donald Trump was elected. And people were terrified. So they went to the Democratic Party meeting, and I mean, not much came from that either. So I would say no. I mean, we talked about it briefly, James. Like, a lot of times, especially when you live somewhere where so many people live in their own bubble and their own comfort, a lot of times people don't really wake up, don't really open their eyes. They don't get their bubble burst. They don't care until something truly tragic happens.
How do you harness this energy, though? So you have young people wanting change, pushing for change. You're one of them. You're out there all the time pushing for change, but you make suggestions, and then no action takes place. What happens if you continually become the hamster on the wheel? What happens to a society when young people aren't listened to?
I mean, I've seen it happen firsthand. I was around when Dayvin got elected, And I was around when David made the decision to leave. And I remember last year at a county board meeting, I made some comments and reminded them that there is nobody on that board who looks like me or looks darker than I do, because they drove Dayvin into the ground. Dayvin didn't feel safe in Kenosha. He didn't feel comfortable. He wasn't listened to. And I definitely feel now that I've been doing this for so long, and especially that we're at this point where we're truly dealing with people's lives now, I understand where he's coming from. And those are things that I've contemplated. It used to be, I have to stay in Kenosha because if I don't stay to make it better, then my younger siblings or the generation after me, they're going to deal with the same problems. But now it's turning more into, if I stay here, I'm going to get run into the ground. It's not going to be good for me. So I definitely know how this ends if things don't change.
Dayvin, did you heard what Diamond just said? Is that true? Did you feel unsafe?
Well, there was a moment certainly in trying to mediate a street fight with some constituents and their families that I realized there was nobody in Kenosha bothering to work on homophobia. There was nobody in Kenosha bothering to really work on racism. Folk just didn't seem to care. And so when you have that situation, you have to wonder who exactly has your back. And the answer is nobody.
That's a very deep and powerful statement. David Bowen, for you, like I said, you were marching in DC a couple of weeks ago. I've seen you marching all over the place. And what would you say to someone who would say that that's really not your role to actually be out there marching and doing that kind of work? That your role as a state rep is not to really do that, but your role is to do whatever politicians do. What would you say to someone who would pose that question to you?
I think it's a great question. And when I was in DC, I had a chance to connect with some of those activists, elected officials in our U.S. Congress, AOC, Cori Bush, a number of amazing young leaders that, they are rooted in organizing, they are rooted in activism. And when you are not being heard, when you are not getting any progress, I see more of us that have those roots going right back to using those tactics, because there is no other way to find the progress for the folks that we represent, for the folks that want to be able to live in a state where they can have access to the best life that God has given them. And if it takes us, like Cori Bush did, to sleep on the steps, if it takes us to be up at 2 a.m, engaging young people, engaging people to be a part of this fight, like AOC, if it takes us to be able to march a year, and big shouts out to the People's Revolution and so many people, young and old, locally, multiracial, that have come together and have advocated that this is the time to be able to fight for this once and for all, that we don't have to continue to go year after year or wait shooting for shooting to happen, and to see Black bodies and brown bodies and so many people hurt by a system when we can prevent these things from happening, and to usher in the policies that we know that will work, that will protect individuals and hold our officers and our police departments to a higher standard. And it's so funny when I get a chance. I usually think that I'm demonized to folks in the law enforcement community, but I run into officers who tell me thank you all the time. I run into officers that are willing to live up to a higher standard because they know that their duty is far above the talking points and the talking heads that are used to attack us, to turn us into targets when we're out there protesting. So I'm so proud of the people that are using this era, this time, to put everything on the line. Because at the end of the day, what will we have to show 10 years, 20 years from now? Will we still have our grandchildren fighting the same fights that we fought, or will we be able to say that we at least made some progress and passed the baton so that they can run even further?
I want to bring Justin back on. So, Justin, one thing that David Bowen mentioned is that this was after the shooting of Jacob Blake, this was a coming together of a lot of people, black and white, young and old. It happened. We saw it with George Floyd. Fortunately, we keep seeing it over and over again. I don't know whose phone that is. But my question to you is this.
That was ours. I'm sorry, brother. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. My question to you is this. Are you surprised at the outpouring of support from people of all races and all backgrounds to show support for your nephew?
I don't know why I couldn't hear what you just said. Can you hear us?
Yeah, the question is, are you surprised at the support from people from all different races and backgrounds, ages and backgrounds to show support to your brother, after he was shot?
Not at all. The support that we got for the last 10 months, almost a year that we've been down there, every time we threw a rally or an event, hundreds came out and sometimes thousands came out, bro. So I think society as a whole is so tired of what they've been seeing of African Americans' lives being taken for nothing. George Floyd, Jacob Blake being shot the way he was. They're absolutely done with it. And that's why we hope everybody comes out this Saturday at 12 o'clock to Civic Park to once again support justice for Jacob Blake.
That starts at what time again?
It's at 12 o'clock at Civic Park, which is right in front of the Wisconsin.
Okay. I'm going to go around to everyone in, it's actually at 11:30 it starts, according to Diamond. So 11:30 at Civic Park. I'm going to go around and start with Diamond and see what she would like to see happen within the next couple of months, short term, and also what she would like to see long term when it comes to addressing the issues that are taking place in Kenosha.
Short term, I don't know. I would like to see the people who are currently in office saying that they're doing things. I'd like to see them actually show me the things that they're doing, like put some actions where their words are. Long term, I think the only way we actually cultivate and generate change is by, number one, popping people out of these bubbles. They need to be popped out of their bubbles. The ones that are still there, they gotta go. And number two, politics in Kenosha are so dirty and establishment, and it's so hard to get anything done. And it's actually really hard to run for office here because things are so, oh, well, I'm done now, so let me train my next person, and then everyone needs to support this person and they get in. Or, oh, there's an appointment. I have the best cousin who could do this, so let's put them in that position. And so I think until we can really fix this establishment issue and this, like, I hate to say it because it's said all the time, but it's the truth. Until we fix this good old boy club in Kenosha, I don't think we're really going to generate change because the people who can make the change are so concerned about pleasing one another rather than doing what's actually good for the community. And a lot of those people, I don't think they even know what's good for the community because they don't listen to us.
And last question for you, Diamond. When you hear about the changes that they want to make to the old Chrysler plant, where they want to turn it into a place that's vacant now, but they want to turn it into a place where people could work, live, and play, is how it's been described. It's an innovation type center. When you hear that as being part of the change that the mayor and several alder people have been pushing for, it's years down the road. But what do you think when you hear something about that in Kenosha?
I don't think it's the solution at all. I think when the mayor first brought up the idea to me, I was interested at least. And I thought it had a lot of potential. I thought perhaps this could be something good for Kenosha, but it's not something that's going to solve our problems. In fact, I think if anything, it's going to make a lot of these problems worse. Because the issue in Kenosha is not just police issues. We have issues of low income. We have issues with housing. We have issues with the price of rent skyrocketing and people not being able to afford anywhere to live. And then we have the homelessness issue, which is getting worse. So I don't know. I can't think of any possible way in which bringing in an innovation center or anything like it that would drive up the surrounding area's market would be beneficial and would cultivate any good change at this time.
Thank you. David Bowen, short term, long term, what do you want to see happen in places like Kenosha and Milwaukee for that instance?
Yeah, I think what's really important is that we have to stop changing the subject. And every time we get focused on our most controversial issues and we get a chance to talk about real solutions that can be used and actually listen to the people affected, there are some people that are so uncomfortable that they cannot stand the conversation itself. So the most thing that we need to do is stay on topic, right? And we have a number of solutions that we know that work, that already have been proven in other police departments and other jurisdictions, and that we can be able to move towards creating the best life that God has given all of us to be able to live, work, and play together first before we get to anything else. And I think it's also important that we have some courage. Really, it's important that we are in a position to not be afraid of what it means when you have people of color in your community that cannot get access to a quality of life that is no different than the folks that don't look like them, the folks with white skin in our communities. We have to be honest about the things that are holding us back from the best state that we could be. And that means that we actually have to address systemic racism. It means that we actually have to have leaders in law enforcement that will embrace reform. Every police leader across our state has a chance to do that, to be able to lead their departments in a way where they are listening to the community, where they're embracing reforms that we know that work, where we know that they are actually using their platforms to help champion and giving the message, especially to legislators in Madison, that they are not afraid of raising the stakes and raising the expectations for their departments to be able to rise to occasion in this era. I think that's one of the best things that we can do short term.
How optimistic are you?
Whew, that's a good question. So if it's about optimism, I am optimistic in the people that are fighting for the change. I am not optimistic in the people that continue to ignore those who have been out fighting time and time again, out advocating, engaging residents, engaging the public. The folks that are closing their ears right now are doing a really big disservice to the future of our communities that we know that we deserve.
Thank you. Let's go to Dayvin. Dayvin, short term, long term, what do you want to see happen?
Short term, long term, I think there has to be an effort across Southeast Wisconsin to get more women of color onto the police force. We know that particularly Black and Latin women are more judicious and more conscious in terms of their use of force and the application of force. And women tend to survive stressful situations, handle them a bit better than men do. So I feel like that might be, I don't want to say a way out, but at least a clearing for things to get better and some possible work to happen. And I think there has to be a deliberate effort to root out the ghost skins that exist inside of departments and are allowed to be there and to thrive. I guess I want to piggyback off of what David Bowen just said. You know, the people who are shoving their fingers in their ears and don't want to have this conversation, I guess my question to them is very simple. Is a riot preferable to you? I have a group of Black and Latinx string players, and what they do is they go and play in the immediate aftermath of shootings to help people deal with the grief and the trauma, but they also go and play at riots to try to prevent violence from breaking out among anybody. So not to make the changes, are you saying to me that, you like shelling out money to compensate businesses? You like shelling out money for unnecessary road repair and to replace streets and replace signage and to do all of these things and to pay for all the tanks that'll be rolling through. Like, are you really willing to just keep shelling out the cash? Because that's the alternative. As much of a stick in the mud as you want to be, that is the alternative. And if you're telling me that's preferable, you're insane.
You also mentioned, and I think we'll close with this, you also mentioned something of an apology that's needed. Like you would like to hear the powers that be in Kenosha to apologize to the African-American community for their misdeeds and how they've treated us. Can you expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I can. It was astounding to me. Every year there's a MLK dinner that they have where folks get together who worked at Chrysler, and they celebrate integrating the assembly line. Well, I went one year and saw all these black folks I'd never seen before and started asking, where do you live? Where do you live? Where do you live? Where do you live? And the response came back, Racine, out of almost everyone's mouth. So we're celebrating integrating the assembly line, but we couldn't quite integrate the community so that people working on the assembly line who were black and brown couldn't necessarily live there. And it's a fact that everybody in that room knows, but deliberately ignores. And I think that goes to the core of the question of the dishonesty about a community. You can do all these things after the fact, but if you don't acknowledge up front that you've got a population that you've never valued as human beings, that you've done things to deliberately keep them out and deter them from being part of your community, then you're just going to be trapped in this vicious cycle. It's just going to be a game of whack-a-mole.
Thank you. I think that'll be a good place to end this conversation. I want to thank our guests for participating in this deep talk. It's kind of funny that we a year later, we're still having some of these same conversations, and that needs to change. But having these types of conversations and moving the conversation hopefully forward is a good beginning, but we have to hit the fast forward and really take action on some of these key issues. For those who joined us and those who listened, please share this live. It was great conversation, and continue to listen to us. We will bring you more MKE live events in the future. And again, I want to thank our guests, and keep in mind that there will be some Jacob Blake events taking place over the weekend, this Friday and Saturday as well. So talk to you soon, and good night. Thank you.